Today we're going to have a look at one of the smallest maps in the game, which is Dynasty's Pearls. And it's not the smallest map because it is simply smaller than the others. The maps are actually all the same size, but rather it is the case because most of the map is just covered by buildings here. It is a city map with only some smaller roads to just drive through and just leading you into some very tricky situations and close combat scenarios. Welcome to another map guide. This is Nino. Let me talk you through the main spots and moves on Dynasty's Pearls, and also I will tell you my most favorite move to win this map. So as always, I would like to start with the first spots here. Let's just go for the safest one first. The safest one for light tanks, medium tanks, heavy tanks would be just in a bush over here, where you can just get in some spots on the medium side. You can see a lot of enemies, can maybe already put in a first shot into one or the other tank. I would mostly prefer to shoot the outer flank first, but the reason for that I will just tell you later on still. Another more sneaky first spot that I actually just prefer to this one is just getting into the city, onto this plateau, and just trying to get in some first shots into those guys who are just pushing into the city. So you already know if the enemies are splitted potentially, or if it's just all going for the city. You can just have a couple of shots, especially with a Batchet or Progetto. This can be really nice. If there is no one right to your front, then you should be careful because you can get shot from the right side, from the mediums on the mat side. So you should just not stay there, but you can also move forwards a little bit still and try to put in a shot into enemies who are potentially still crossing into the park area. Some slower tank like Tortoise, E100 whatsoever can just be there potentially. But don't do this move too early, otherwise you're going to run into lots of trouble. Only disadvantage of this position might be if all the enemies are coming towards you and your team is not with you. You might be very trapped there. But this is a rare case. It mostly works out perfectly fine. But there are also cases where the two first spots that I mentioned already are just already taken, and then you don't have to do those anymore. In that scenario, I would mostly just drive a little bit further to the map side and just try to get hull down in the hills here and just put in some shots out into the enemies from over there. There's also a bush which may allow you to just get in some nice first spots, but it requires a lot of gun depression to be there. So yeah, just be cautious about this. Also, you might get trapped there. So it's not my first choice. So much about the first spots. Another thing you might want to do is just get out to the outer side to just have some nice angle of crossfiring the enemies. With a medium TD heavy tank is might work out, but it's not the best option to go for at the start. Just gotta keep in mind that you can do so later on, just to see what you can do there for a passive option. Before we get to the pushes, let's just talk about the other tank classes for the start of the game. For the heavy tanks, I would also just do the same move and just get to the first spot here in the bush, but it is then to be considered to just move to the outer side here. But generally speaking, the bush here is a very nice hull down position. Some super heavy tanks might not have the strongest turret. They can just also ply down here in between the big walls. Also, for a super heavy tank, you can even consider to get into the lane behind the B and just crossfire, just shoot down everyone that's in front of you, and might just move through the B cap later on still if the game is being played for the park area. If the game is on the completely other side of the map, then for a heavy tank I would just mostly drive towards the middle here and just take a hull down or side scraping position over here. You can take these stairs over here to just have some really nice hull down position, which allows you to just shoot all the way over the A cap into enemies crossing over there, and you can then still have a lot of options. You're pretty safe in that position. It is very unlikely that you're getting pushed there and you are in a good hull down spot. But what if you're not having a lot of armor? Then this one does not work because the enemies might just shoot through your turret quite easily, so don't do this then. If you're playing an autoloader or just weakly armored tanks, this also applies to tank destroyers by the way, then I would just try to fight for the outer side of the map. If we are still on the city here, then it wouldn't mean for me to just get far to the outer side here, because on the one side here on the north spawn you actually do have a bush which works quite nicely, and this allows you to just shoot over to the other side here. So that's definitely a nice spot. On the south spawn, unfortunately, you do not have a bush, but it is still possible to just crossfire, and you can have a pretty nice position for pre-aiming the enemies and might just push forwards later on still. On the medium side, the autoloaders are a little bit more tricky, just as the TDs are. For the autoloaders, you might also consider a move towards the B side here, like on the super heavies, because you're not having the turret armor to play hull down. The park is just very small and is just not having a lot of positions that allow you to just cover your entire tank, and lots of those positions require you to have a strong turret. So what you can do is just raid behind here and just shoot into the C cap if anyone's crossing through that. With autoloaders, TDs, this might work out. Otherwise, what you can do is just move further to the outer side here and just crossfire people over there, but the enemies will be hull down in front of you, and this might be tricky. So with TDs, I would mostly stay in this area, and for autoloaders, I might even then, after the first shots, I might just try to push forwards, but push comes in a second. Let's talk about that first. Let's just really mention one big disadvantage here about one side over the other, and that is you can just see a little bit here on this side, on the C side, you can just shoot all the way through, which is really nice for autoloaders, tank destroyers for a first shot at the start. This is a great option which you should try to make use of, but this does not work from the other side. From the south side, you might see it here, and this is going around the corner, so you cannot shoot into the mediums on the medium flank there. This adds up to the difference of positions over here with a bush on the one side, so the north spawn actually does have a slight advantage over the south spawn here on this map. Okay, I've mentioned it so often. What is the main push opportunity here? I was already telling you a little bit. It is just mostly about pushing the outer side here. Even if you're losing some hit points for this, this is absolutely crucial to kill the outer side here. Why is this so important? Because on the outer flank, it's mostly DPM tanks with a lot of DPM, yeah. It's the mediums sitting on the outer side there, and the outer side can just crossfire. If you manage to clear the outer flank, then you do have a great option of shooting the enemies which are still over here, the heavy tanks there, because you're then in a hull down spot right to their side and they cannot do anything anymore. In many situations, this is the absolute game-winning move. Rarely it is also the case that you're just playing a heavy tank that is just fighting for the middle here, so you can just move your way forwards and also try to shoot the mediums down first on the outer side, and then the heavies are just an easy target for everyone. With a very well armored and high hit points super heavy tank, you might even consider to just push through the C cap to get to the medium side. This is a brave move. Only do this when you're quite sure that there is not too much to your side. Otherwise you're going to struggle there and this might cost your life. So be very cautious about this move. But what if none of that works? Well, sometimes the enemies are to the other side and then you will just have no one in front and you still have to reconsider how you're going to push in. First move I would do, if I'm going for the park side and none of the enemies is over there, then I would just move forwards and try to get into the enemy's back, try to find some isolated targets still that I can just shoot out. Mostly it's some tank destroyers that are just a bit slower than their teammates and they are also struggling to turn around, so you can maybe just kill one tank quite easily. If you already expect the enemies to come for your back, then there might also be a good option of just using one of those bushes here, which require a bit of gun depression, but you can spot the whole lane and can just get in some nice shots from over there. Pushing into the city is a bit trickier to do. It is also worth it in many situations. You can get behind the enemies and just put out some nice crossfire if they are going for the B cap, but still it is just dangerous to push forward into the city then. If you're already in the city, on the other hand, you might just have a bit more of a disadvantage pushing into the park. First of all, I would try to make sure that there is no one in the back here anymore and would try to push forwards here using the ramps, maybe the stairs here, to just take some hull down positions, and you can then just push forwards. If there is no one, you can try to get behind the enemies and try to push into the park immediately. If you're playing a light tank or medium tank, I would just try to keep a safer distance for the starting move and maybe just go far for the outer side, deep into the enemy spawn. You might be able to just stay unspotted back there, crossfiring the C cap. This can also be an option if your teammates are just fighting the enemies in the park area and you're having a light tank that is able to just flank around. What I would definitely try to avoid with most tanks would be pushing through the B cap here, because there are lots of options for you to get crossfired, unless if the enemies are just pushing some teammates of yours, so they're all focusing someone else, and then you really have to help, and you should not stay in the city for too long and just let your teammates die. Try to be helpful as quickly as possible there. So much about Dynasty's pros, but do you also know the world's missed hikes and best spots for desert sands already? Have a look at my previous map guide then.